Hello there everybody and welcome on in. If you're new to Magic the Gathering or you just like playing super casual with your friends, then this video series is gonna be for you. So, I personally believe Magic the Gathering is a fun hobby that can be played really by anybody, and it should be played by anybody. Whether your price budget for a deck is $500 or $25. So we're actually going to be going with the low tier on this right here, because I want us to do things building on a budget. That way it's friendly to anybody who's new to the game, or they just want to just try something for fun with friends just casually. So episode 1 is going to be Red-Green Landfall. So anyways, I'm 16-Bit Ferret, and welcome to Building on a Budget. So, let's go check out this deck. What is it running? Before we get into the deck, we're going to discuss what mechanics this deck is going to be running. The main mechanic this deck is going to be running is the Landfall mechanic. Landfall was a mechanic introduced to us back in the original Zendikar block. This mechanic triggers whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. The usual effects of this mechanic is giving a creature a buff or other various mechanics, such as bringing creatures into play or shooting things for damage. So let's head on to the deck list now. Now mind you, for everything on this deck list, we're going to be using the prices of TCG Player, and the prices are going to be around when we wrote this script. So starting off with creatures. The first creature in this deck list is going to be Plated Geopede. With a casting cost of 1 and a red, this creature has First Strike and Landfall. Plated Geopede's Landfall trigger gives Plated Geopede +2/+2 until end of turn, making this creature be able to apply a lot of pressure early game, whether you are attacking or blocking with. So we're going to be running 4 copies of Plated Geopede, and the cost is going to be about 40 cents. Alright, so far still pretty budget. Next up on the list is going to be Brushfire Elemental. This creature's casting cost is for a red and a green, and it's a 1/1 with haste, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and also has landfall. Just like Plated Geopede, Brushfire Elemental's landfall trigger gives it +2/+2 until end of turn, making this creature unblockable early game, allow you to get in some pretty early damage, or allow you to completely just skate past walls that your opponents are playing. A play set for this deck is going to run you about under 50 cents. That's really cheap. Then again, this card is an uncommon. Now moving on to some beefier creatures. Grove Rumbler. This brute costs 2, a red, and a green. They are also a 3/3 with trample and landfall. Just like before with Plated Geopede and Brushfire Elemental, this creature's landfall trigger gives him +2/+2 until end of turn. Now, trample's a fun ability because whenever we have any attack that is higher than our opponent's defense, it goes right over as straight damage. So this creature, if it gets big, it's going to punch through and it's going to do a lot of damage. So this is going to be a big threat for your opponents if left unchecked, and you have a lot of landfall triggers activated on this turn. Just like everything before, running a playset of it, and it's going to be about less than 50 cents for a full copy. And now on to the big boy of this deck, Rampaging Baloth. This bulking bulk of a beast only costs 4 and double green. And for all that, you get a 6/6 creature with trample and landfall. However, this time the landfall trigger is a little bit different. This baddie brings in 4/4 green beast creature tokens whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, making this creature pretty nice and giving you a nice good sizable board in the process of dropping lands. A full play set for this right here from Commander 2021 is going to run you under $1. Okay, now on to artifacts and enchantments. We're first going to be going over the artifacts. We only have one true artifact in this deck list, and that's going to be Skyclave Pickaxe. With a casting cost of a single green, whenever Skyclave Pickaxe enters the battlefield, attach it to creature you control. Landfall, and has an equip cost for 2 and a green if you want to move it to another creature. Now, much like the creatures we have here in our Landfall triggers, this also gives equipped creature +2/+2 until end of turn for a Landfall trigger. So this is where things are going to get kind of crazy, and we're going to start covering that later on. This deck is going to be rocking a full playset of that right there, and you can actually get a full playset for under a quarter. So that's really nice. Now on to the only enchantment for this deck. This is kind of weird because this is both an enchantment and artifact, and that's going to be Hammer of Porphyros. This legendary card has a casting cost of 1 and a double red, and it gives all creatures you control haste. It also has an activated ability of 2 and a red, and tapping it, where you sacrifice a land, bring in a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token into play. This hammer not only lets us hit the turn we're able to drop creatures, but it also lets us make blockers if we are hurting for blockers. A full solid playset for this deck list is under $5. Alright, not bad. Now on to the instants and sorceries for this deck list. First up, we're going to be talking about Groundswell. Groundswell is an instant with a casting cost of a single green, and it gives target creature +2/+2 until end of turn. However, if landfall has happened this turn, like us dropping a land, it gives +4/+4 until end of turn, not +2/+2. So it doubles the power it does for a single green. This card is really good. For a single green, you can give a creature +4/+4, and we'll discuss more on strategies with it when we get later into the video. A whole playset of this is under $1.50. For the original Worldwake printing at that too. What? Next up on this is going to be Explore. Explore is a sorcery that costs a single green and a colorless mana. And it lets us play an additional land this turn and lets us draw a card. So not only do we get an extra landfall trigger from playing this, we also get an extra card draw too. This card is really going to help us accelerate us dropping lands, doing landfall triggers, or just helping us refill that hand. A full playset of this is going to be under $1.50 again. And for the original Worldwake printing at that too. Wow, really good cards and a really good value. And now last but definitely not least on this deck list is going to be Anger of the Gods. This sorcery costs us a single red and double green. Anger of the Gods deals 3 damage to each creature, and if that creature dies because of damage dealt by this card, that creature gets exiled instead of going to the graveyard. This card is going to be great for picking off small creatures, or if we have 2 landfall triggers activated this turn, play this. You won't lose a single creature in this deck, guaranteed. It'll be dealing 3 damage to everything and most likely wiping out a good thing on their boards. Now, a full playset of this will set you back around $6, and that's for the Theros printing. This is going to be the most expensive card for the deck. Now that we have that taken out of the way, let's discuss the land base for this deck. This deck is going to be running a playset of Evolving Wilds. This land allows us to sacrifice it to search our deck for a basic land, but it comes into play tapped. This land will give us 2 landfall triggers for the cost of playing 1 land. Speaking of value, because of how often this card has been printed, you can get a whole playset of this for under 50 cents. Next up on the lands deck list is going to be Myriad Landscape. Now this card comes into the battlefield tapped, and also gives us the ability to tap it for a single colorless mana when it is untapped, and the ability of paying 2 and tapping it to sacrifice it. Then you can search your deck for 2 basic lands that share a land type. So for our deck's sake, it's going to be either 2 forests or 2 mountains. So now this land comes into play tapped, or the lands we have from it come into play tapped, and we then shuffle our deck. So not only does this deck give us a single landfall trigger when it's being played, like playing any land, but we can later save it to pocket 2 landfall triggers from a single card. This card is going to be amazing for us hammering down a hard finishing blow. And a whole playset for this deck is going to be like a whole $1. Just that's it. Wow. And the final cards in this list is going to be just 8 forests, 8 mountains. And that's going to round out this whole deck list. I'm not even going to conclude the cost of these right here, because if you ask someone for, hey, can I have a basic mountain or a basic forest, they'll just hand you one thing. Here you go, I guess. Now this whole deck is going to run you under $18. Wow. For first episode of Building on a Budget, this is actually way under budget even for this right here. Okay, now that we have the deck list put together and the price tag put on it, how does this deck run? Well, after turn 2, this deck is nothing but all gas and no brakes. Let's say we have a really okay hand, and by turn 3 you have either a plated Geopede or Brushfire Elemental out in the field. If you slap on a Skyclave Pickaxe on that creature before playing the land that turn, then play said land, this creature is going to be swinging in for 5 damage, because the landfall from the Pickaxe and the landfall from either the plated Geopede or Brushfire Elemental, they will stack. So that'll mean that one land will give you a +4/+4 just on that right there. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on opponents fast. Now let's say we put it on something heavier like Rampaging Baloth. That's going to be damage that an opponent just cannot deal with, making that card a really big threat. Now one card that's going to really help us accelerate our landfall drops is going to be Explore and Evolving Wilds, along with the Myriad Landscape. I bring this point up with both Evolving Wilds and Myriad Landscape because we can activate them at any time. So let's say we need to block because we're kind of pushed back on the ropes. This will allow us to either play defensively or offensively, no matter which way things will slide. So this deck does have a nice little balance to it. Now, what would I rate this deck? I would say this deck is mostly aggressive, has no control to it, so whatever our opponents do, we basically can't say anything about it. So, but it is still a fun deck to play if you do want to have something to play with your friends and you're new to Magic and you just want to get together and have fun. Now, let's say you like this deck and let's say you want to upgrade this deck. One card I highly recommend for upgrading this deck is going to be Avenger of Zendikar. Now this creature is a 5/5 that for 5 and a double green, it allows you to put a 1/1 plant creature token into the battlefield for each land you control. And then the landfall ability on this one is very unique. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. So it gives a permanent buff on the plant. And the cheapest copy around this is going to be like under $6. So even still, like if you wanted to have a full $25 budget and stuff, you could knock out a Raging Baloth, put one of these in there, and still be under $25. And that's going to be it for this episode, folks. I want to say thank you so very much for watching. This is our first time really editing a video, so any feedback will actually be very greatly appreciated. I want to say a big shout out to my friend Jen Taxis for helping me put this list together. And we put this list together back, months ago, so it's been a hot minute. Anyways, like I said before, I'm 16-Bit Ferret. It's good seeing you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!